I'm 75 now, and I can't remember anybody except the Queen bee.
The Windsor Gala was supposed to display unity, elegance, and royal control. Instead, one private confrontation shattered the calm behind the ballroom doors. Palace aides have now revealed that Queen Camilla personally ordered Catherine's name removed from the gala's closing tribute and demanded the central ceremonial position for herself, only for King Charles to reverse the instruction in front of senior staff, leaving his wife exposed, furious, and visibly humiliated. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles entered the evening knowing every detail had been arranged to project stability. The Windsor Gala, an annual royal gathering built around service, continuity, and remembrance, had given each senior family member a measured role. William and Catherine stood near the center, while Anne, Edward, and Sophie supported the program. That balance mattered because the closing tribute was more than a speech. It was a public signal of who would carry the monarchy forward. Camilla changed everything less than an hour before that tribute began. She summoned 2 senior aides, pointed to the final program, and ordered Catherine's name removed. The Queen Consort also demanded that the princess be moved away from Charles so she could take the central place herself. One aide later described the moment in a documented account, making clear that the instruction was direct and impossible to misunderstand. The amended program reached the king within minutes. He read it twice before placing the page flat on the table. Charles asked who had authorized the changes. When the aide answered, his expression hardened. He did not shout. That made the silence worse. The monarch then walked into the side chamber where Camilla was waiting and told the staff to restore Catherine's original position. Camilla did not move. She argued that Catherine was being presented as the real future of the crown, while she was being treated as temporary. Charles answered that the tribute was about continuity, not personal status. His words cut through the room because continuity meant the passing of duty, visibility, and responsibility from one generation to the next. It mattered because Catherine's place beside him showed confidence in William's household. Removing her would have looked like a deliberate rejection of that future. The door opened. Staff returned. Camilla remained pale while Catherine's name was restored. Yet the deepest shock was not the failed order. It was the fear beneath it. But to understand why one altered program could strike such a devastating nerve, the people standing inside that Windsor chamber must first be understood, not as royal titles, but as individuals fighting for belonging, loyalty, and survival. Behind the polished smiles at Windsor stood 4 people carrying 4 very different fears. Camilla feared becoming invisible. Catherine feared being blamed for a battle she had never asked to fight. William feared watching history repeat itself around another Princess of Wales. And Charles faced the most painful choice of all: protect his wife's pride, or defend the future structure of the monarchy before private jealousy became a public crisis. Camilla entered the gala expecting more than courtesy. She believed the central place beside Charles confirmed that she remained the highest-ranking royal woman in the room, a position tied not only to ceremony but to influence. A queen consort is the wife of the reigning king, supporting the monarch without holding his constitutional power. And for her, that distinction made public placement feel deeply personal. If Catherine stood closer to the king during the closing tribute, the queen feared the room would read it as a sign that her authority was already fading. Catherine carried a different burden. After months of strain and relentless attention, she had agreed to appear because Charles personally asked her to represent continuity, meaning the visible passing of duty from the present reign to the next generation. She accepted out of loyalty, not ambition. Yet every warm greeting from guests seemed to tighten Camilla's expression because those conversations linked the princess with stability, recovery, and the monarchy's future. William noticed the shift before anyone altered the program. He drew his wife aside and asked whether she wanted to leave early. Catherine refused. She told the prince she would not turn a family evening into a public confrontation, and he respected her choice, even as his fear deepened. He had watched another Princess of Wales become trapped inside palace rivalry before, and he would not allow silence to consume his wife. Charles stood near the private reception room, rereading the original program. A documented staff account later recorded that he looked exhausted rather than angry. The king understood the choice before him. Correcting the order would wound Camilla, but leaving it unchanged would wound William and publicly diminish Catherine. Anne had already heard about the attempted alteration. She warned a courtier that moving Catherine at the last moment would look like a deliberate rebuke. Sophie then approached the princess, squeezed her hand, and said, "Stay exactly where you were placed." The trusted confidant offered no explanation, but Catherine understood. The warning confirmed that the struggle had already begun. That gesture happened weeks before the gala, and those who witnessed it would later describe it as the exact moment Camilla realized the crown's emotional center was beginning to shift away from her. Every royal crisis has a moment that seems harmless until history gives it meaning. For Camilla, that moment came at Sandringham, inside a private memorial reception where Charles opened a small velvet case and handed Catherine a piece associated with Queen Elizabeth's public service. The room applauded. Catherine looked overwhelmed. Camilla smiled for the guests, but one witness saw her fingers tighten around the stem of her glass. Charles had intended the evening to feel personal, not political. The Sandringham reception honored charities connected to the late Queen and brought senior family members together in a smaller setting than a state occasion, which is a large formal event held on behalf of the monarchy. That difference mattered. Every gesture felt intimate, and every reaction became harder to hide. Catherine had only recently returned to limited duties, so the king wanted to recognize her commitment before she resumed a more visible public role. Charles opened the case and presented Catherine with Queen Elizabeth's sapphire service brooch. A service brooch is a symbolic piece of jewelry linked to royal duty rather than personal ownership. He asked her to wear it at the Windsor Gala as proof that the work of the crown would continue through the next generation. The princess looked shaken by the honor. Camilla had not been warned, yet she had to applaud while attention shifted toward another woman. Camilla waited until the guests had gone. She confronted Charles and asked why he had made the presentation without consulting her. The Queen accused him of allowing Catherine to appear as though she already held the senior female role. He answered that the brooch represented service, not rank. Then she asked whether the princess would stand beside him during the Windsor tribute. Charles hesitated. That silence wounded her more than any direct answer could have done. Camilla acted the following morning. She requested the full gala program, seating chart, rehearsal schedule, and speaking order. A seating chart is the official plan showing where each guest or royal figure will be placed. She studied Catherine's name, questioned her prominence, and began pressing staff for changes. Concern had become strategy. Catherine knew nothing of the argument. She returned the brooch to its case and admitted to William that wearing it felt heavy because it carried so much memory. He reassured his wife that honoring the late Queen did not mean replacing anyone. She believed him. Camilla did not. And when the two women finally faced each other away from the ballroom, the battle was no longer about a brooch, a program, or a place beside Charles. It was about which woman the monarchy believed represented its future. The music continued beyond the walls, but inside the private drawing room there was no applause, no audience, and no escape. Camilla stood beside the mantel, while Catherine remained near the closed door, still wearing the sapphire brooch that had triggered weeks of resentment. What followed was not a shouting match. It was colder than that. A conversation between two women who both understood that every carefully chosen word could alter the family forever. Camilla had asked for the meeting moments after Charles restored the original program. No aides entered, though two members of staff waited outside. A private drawing room is a smaller palace sitting room used for personal conversations away from formal gatherings, and its closed door gave both women rare privacy. Catherine already knew something had shifted. Sophie had warned her to remain in place, while William had watched every movement during the final rehearsal. Camilla looked directly at the brooch and asked whether Catherine understood the message it sent. The princess answered that Charles had asked her to wear it and that she had accepted out of duty. The queen consort said the palace was slowly presenting Catherine as the monarchy's true female leader, while reducing her to a temporary figure. Her voice stayed controlled, but her hands trembled as she adjusted her bracelet. Catherine refused to carry blame for choices she had not made. She told Camilla she had never asked for the central position and would step aside if the king personally requested it. But she would not obey secret instructions passed through frightened staff. That mattered because yielding would not only humiliate her, it would teach the household that private pressure could override an order already approved by Charles. Camilla finally admitted what she had done. According to a documented account later prepared from staff testimony, she said she had removed Catherine's name because she feared William's future household was preparing to erase her contribution once Charles's reign ended. The confession changed the argument. This was no longer jealousy alone. It was fear of becoming a footnote. Catherine answered quietly that respect could not be protected by taking another woman's place. The words struck Camilla because they echoed the judgment that had followed her for decades. Outside, William heard the handle move and stepped forward, but Anne stopped him. She said Catherine had entered calmly and must leave on her own terms. The door opened. Catherine emerged composed. Camilla remained behind, alone with what she had admitted. The confrontation exposed the wound, but it did not settle the question of power. And behind another closed door, father and son were preparing an answer Camilla could not overturn. Charles did not raise his voice. He did not summon a public council or issue a dramatic declaration. He simply sat across from William, removed his glasses, and admitted that the gala program had been altered without his consent. In that quiet confession, the balance of power shifted. The king understood that if private insecurity could rewrite royal ceremonies, then the monarchy's public order was no longer being protected. It was being personalized. Charles held final authority over the Windsor Gala, yet many practical decisions had been delegated to household teams serving both him and Camilla. A royal household is the group of aides and officials who organize a senior royal's duties, schedule, and public events. That system mattered because trust allowed ceremonies to run smoothly. The queen consort had long suggested seating changes, guest placements, and small adjustments, and few people had challenged her openly before Windsor. Charles held the revised program and looked disappointed rather than furious. According to a documented account prepared from staff testimony, he told William that Camilla's attempted change had placed loyal aides in an impossible position. They had been forced to choose between obeying her and respecting his approved plan. The king understood the danger. A private insecurity had become an institutional problem, and institutions survive only when authority is clear. William struggled to control his anger. He said Catherine had spent years avoiding rivalry and should not be punished because the public saw her as part of the monarchy's future. The prince reminded his father that his wife had accepted the tribute only after being personally asked. Charles listened, then admitted Camilla feared being discarded. Still, he said protecting his wife could never require diminishing his daughter-in-law. Charles made the boundary official. Every future change involving senior royal placement, ceremonial precedence, or Catherine's duties would require his written approval and consultation with William. Ceremonial precedence is the formal order deciding where royal figures stand, sit, or enter during official events. The king also removed final gala planning authority from Camilla's private office and placed it under a joint team answering to the Lord Chamberlain, the senior official who oversees major royal ceremonies, and to Charles himself. Charles signed the instruction, set down the pen, and stared at the page. William did not celebrate. He understood that the signature protected Catherine, but it also marked a painful line between his father and Camilla. The gala continued beneath glittering chandeliers, but behind Camilla's composed expression, the first consequences were already closing around her, and one small instruction from an aide made the loss impossible to deny. There are moments when power disappears without ceremony. For Camilla, it happened when a young aide approached, lowered his voice, and asked her to return the amended program because it was no longer authorized. Around them, glasses clinked and guests laughed, unaware that the queen consort had just been stripped of control over the very tribute she had attempted to reshape. She handed over the paper, but her expression revealed the cost. Camilla received the formal instruction from her private secretary moments later. A private secretary is the senior aide who manages a royal figure's official work, messages, and decisions, making his presence impossible to dismiss as routine. She read the page twice, folded it with painful care, and asked one question. Had William been present when Charles signed it? When the answer came, the Queen understood that father and son had acted together. That knowledge cut deeper than the loss itself. Camilla saw their agreement as proof that the future reign was already shaping the limits of the present one. The Windsor Gala continued according to its original schedule, with Catherine beside Charles during the closing tribute, and his wife on the other side. No announcement reached the guests. The palace wanted to protect an evening devoted to charitable service and continuity, the steady passing of royal duty from one generation to another. Charles approached before the tribute and offered his arm. Camilla accepted, but she did not meet his eyes. The king walked beside her in silence, knowing the gesture preserved public unity while hiding a private fracture. She remained composed because refusing him would expose the conflict instantly. He remained controlled because forcing a conversation there would deepen her humiliation. Several aides received another instruction. Preserve both versions of the program. An official program is the approved order showing who speaks, where each royal stands, and how a ceremony unfolds. Keeping Camilla's revision meant the incident could never be dismissed as confusion. The paper had become evidence of intent. Catherine stepped forward, wearing the sapphire brooch, and the applause rose around her. Camilla pressed her lips together and blinked rapidly. One courtier later recorded that reaction in a written staff account. The princess glanced toward her, but she showed no triumph. She looked troubled, recognizing that a symbol of continuity had become a weapon of pain. Camilla remained behind after the guests left. Then Catherine returned alone. What happened next would become the true turning point. Not because either woman won, but because one of them finally said aloud the truth the entire family had been avoiding. The ballroom looked entirely different once the guests were gone. No orchestra, no applause, no carefully rehearsed smiles. Camilla sat alone beside a table where abandoned glasses were being cleared, staring at the space where Catherine had stood during the tribute. Then footsteps crossed the floor. The princess returned without William, without Sophie, and without palace staff, choosing to face the woman who had tried to remove her, rather than allowing silence to harden into permanent hatred. Catherine had already reached the corridor, when an aide quietly told her Camilla remained behind. She asked William to wait, and returned alone. That choice mattered, because the prince had every reason to protect his wife, yet she understood that his presence would turn a painful conversation into a family confrontation. Camilla expected Charles or one of her private secretaries, the senior aides who manage royal duties and official messages. Seeing Catherine instead removed every shield. Catherine sat across from her and unfastened the sapphire brooch. She placed it gently between them and said the piece had become a symbol neither woman had intended. The princess did not sound angry. That restraint made the moment harder, because Camilla could no longer defend herself against accusation or raised voices. She had to face simple truth. Camilla admitted that the presentation at Sandringham had awakened an old fear. She believed history was preparing to judge her again, and remember her only as the woman who stood between Diana and Catherine, two figures the public loved more easily. The Queen said she had spent years fighting for acceptance, only to feel that the monarchy was already preparing to move beyond her. Catherine answered that she could not control comparisons, but she would never use Diana's memory or Elizabeth's legacy to humiliate Camilla. She also refused to disappear, simply to protect another woman's confidence. That boundary mattered, because her future role was not a personal reward. It carried duties William would one day share with her. Camilla then confessed, in a private conversation later preserved through a documented staff account, that Charles had never authorized the program change. She knew she was crossing a line when she gave the order. The Queen promised to withdraw every objection to Catherine's ceremonial position and allow her responsibilities to grow without interference. Catherine returned the brooch to its case and slid it forward. Camilla pushed it back and said Elizabeth had chosen symbols carefully. By morning, the private struggle had escaped the castle walls, and one newspaper image transformed a hidden family conflict into a national judgment on Camilla's place within the monarchy. At dawn, the secret moved from whispered corridors to breakfast tables across Britain. The first front page showed Camilla standing rigidly during the closing tribute, while Catherine, wearing Queen Elizabeth's sapphire brooch, stood beside Charles beneath the Windsor lights. Above the image were 6 words that captured the entire crisis. The night the future stood forward. Within hours, the gala was no longer remembered for charity. It was remembered for a royal fracture. Palace aides had released details of the altered program, Charles's intervention, and the transfer of ceremonial control because they feared the public would otherwise be shown a false picture of unity. A ceremonial program is the approved order deciding who speaks, where senior royals stand, and how an official event unfolds. Broadcasters compared that document with Camilla's revision, exposing the exact moment Catherine's name had been removed. Rain fell heavily outside Windsor Castle's Henry V gate, yet the crowd continued to grow. Several people held photographs of Catherine wearing the sapphire brooch, while one handwritten sign declared, "The future does not need to push." The gathering mattered because it turned a private palace dispute into a public judgment. People were no longer debating placement alone. They were deciding what kind of monarchy they wanted to see. One morning broadcaster called the gala, "The night personal fear collided with constitutional symbolism." Constitutional symbolism means a public royal gesture that carries meaning about authority, continuity, or the future of the crown. The presenter framed Charles's action as a defense of order rather than a rejection of Camilla. Still, sympathy divided. Some condemned the Queen's decision, while others saw a woman terrified that decades of struggle were ending in irrelevance. William reacted with anger because the leak dragged Catherine into another storm. He wanted the aides identified, but his wife urged restraint. She told the prince they should first understand why staff believed disclosure had become necessary. Catherine feared punishment would make the palace look more concerned with secrecy than truth. Charles refused demands for a public denial. His silence allowed the central account to stand without issuing a statement that would humiliate Camilla further. The Queen watched the broadcast alone until he entered and switched off the television. She asked whether he regretted restoring Catherine's place. The king answered that he regretted only allowing fear to reach that point. The answer came that evening, when Charles gathered the family at Windsor and delivered a final decision that ended the struggle over Catherine's place, and defined how Camilla would be remembered after the gala. The Windsor Gala did not end Camilla's marriage, remove her title, or erase her years beside Charles. But it ended something equally important, the belief that protecting her position allowed Catherine's future role to be diminished. In the final family meeting, the king made the boundary permanent. Camilla would be honored as his queen. Catherine would be prepared openly for what came next, and no private insecurity would again be permitted to turn one woman's dignity against another's. Charles gathered Camilla, William, Catherine, Anne, Edward, and Sophie in a private Windsor sitting room after the leak consumed public discussion. He rejected demands for another statement because he believed fresh drama would deepen humiliation and turn a family failure into a constitutional spectacle. A constitutional spectacle is a private royal dispute that becomes a public crisis about authority, duty, and the future of the crown. The king wanted truth, but he refused revenge. Charles confirmed that Catherine's ceremonial position would remain unchanged. Every future plan affecting the Prince and Princess of Wales would require consultation with William's household, the team responsible for managing their duties and public role. That decision mattered because it protected the future king's family from secret interference. It also made clear that Camilla's office could advise, but could no longer act alone. Camilla listened as Charles told her that her place beside him remained secure. The Queen would keep her public role, patronages, and position at his side, but security could never again be defended by limiting Catherine's responsibilities. She did not interrupt. Then she turned toward the princess and admitted that ordering her removal from the program had been wrong. Catherine answered without triumph. She said she did not want the gala remembered as one woman defeating another. She wanted it remembered as the moment the family separated personal fear from royal duty. Her restraint gave Camilla room to accept responsibility without losing all dignity, and it gave Charles a path to protect both women without weakening the boundary he had drawn. William accepted the arrangement because his wife's future was fully protected. Charles accepted it because Camilla's place remained honored. The Queen accepted it because further resistance would have isolated her completely. Anne, Edward, and Sophie witnessed the agreement, and their presence turned private words into a family settlement. There was no further battle, no hidden reversal, and no unfinished question. The Windsor Gala became the night Camilla's authority was given a clear limit, Catherine's future place was formally protected, and the monarchy chose continuity without cruelty. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.